Hello and welcome. In this episode of Magi David's Lab, I'm going to show you how I made this little temperature sensor that went into my regulated power supply. So we're going to be starting with this little guy right here, and we're going to solder him to this so that we can have a nice easy way to attach this thermistor to like a heatsink or something like that. And the way I made mine was I just opened this up using just some cutters and then flattened it out. So we'll go ahead and do that right now. It's hard to see. You want to start applying pressure right where the seam is so that we can get this to open up. And there we go, we got it to open up. Pretty easy there. And that's the first step. There we go, we've got that ready to go. And we need to flatten it out. And the best tool for that is to use a pair of pliers that actually don't have any teeth. It's nice and flat. This is great for straightening out a lot of things. Now, I don't want to just grab this and mash down on it because it could end up flattening it in the wrong direction. So I'm going to grab one end here and then just kind of twist it out a little bit. And then come over and do the same thing on the other side. So now when I mash down on it, it's going to go the way I want it to. Just keep flattening it out. Take your time. And then when you get it nice and wide open like that, now we can come in and really just start flattening it out the way we want it. And then when you get it nice and flat like that, just put it in there. Give it a good squeeze. And flatten that out as best as you can. Okay. So now that's all set. We flattened it out, and now we've got a nice base to install the thermistor on. So now we're going to prep this. Alright, so I've got the terminal plugged into a helping hand here, and you'll notice I've actually got tape on the end of this alligator clip, and that's just to prevent the teeth from digging into wires and other soft materials when I've got them clamped in here. So now that I've got that set up the way I want it, I need to put some flux on the tip of this to make sure that when I put the solder on there, we're going to get a nice bond. So I've got a flux pin right here, and I'm just going to get some flux on that. Get my soldering iron. Now I'm not going to try and heat this plate up. It's going to take too much time. So what I'm going to actually do here to start things off is I'm actually going to put some solder on the tip. And this is why we put flux on here, because the flux in the solder is burned off now. So I'm just going to bring this down here, and I'm going to let it sit there. And what I'm waiting for is for that solder to start flowing onto the terminal. Let me go ahead and add a little bit more in there. So now that's what we want. See how that solder has spread out now? So that's what we want. Okay, so that's ready to go. I've got the little thermistor here. And what I need to do is I need to put a little bit of flux on this one side. This is very important. Now this is where you're going to need a pair of needle nose pliers. So I'm going to grab the needle nose pliers, carefully turn over the part. Make sure you keep a good grip on these pliers. You have to switch your hand around here. And what we're going to end up doing is just heating the solder up until it's melted, and then just set the thermistor right on it. Let it sit there for a second and take the soldering iron away. The flux will do its job, and this should give us a nice, good, strong bond here. So we get the solder melted. Okay, I'm just going to drop this down on there. Put it where we want it. That's good. Take the iron away, let that cool. What I want to do now is remove that and cool it. And what I really want to do at this point is grab this with one pair of pliers. And I'm just going to give that thermistor a good little push there. And I want to make sure that we've got a really good bond there. You know, it's not going to just come loose. And as you can see, I cannot. And I'm putting a good amount of pressure here, and it will not come off. So we've got a really good bond there, and that is because of the flux. Using flux at this point, the way that I've showed you, is extremely important. It really cleans the surface and allows that solder to bond, so it's helpful. So we're halfway there now. Okay, so all we got to do now is add a wire to this. So we've got to prep this first, and to do that, then I'm going to have to use my little claw here. Hold that wire in place. And now you can see why I have the tape on here. This way the teeth won't bite into the insulation of the wire and cause damage to the wire. And I want to go ahead and put some flux on here. Now I'm going to put a little bit of solder on the iron. It's just to help with heat transfer. I'll come over and put that on the. Just want to give that a good coat of solder there. So now we're pretty much going to do the reverse here. You need to put solder on the top of this, and the first thing you want to do is put a little flux on there. Now I'm going to put some solder on the soldering iron tip. Not a lot, just a little. And I'm going to come down and put that solder. You can see that pretty much as soon as I touched it, the flux cleaned the part and the solder just flowed right over it. So we have exactly what we want here. Is a nice good starting point. And since we put solder on the thermistor and we put solder on the wire, marrying these two together is going to be a piece of cake. Okay, I'm just about ready here. One of the things I want to come in and do is trim the length of the exposed wire. So we really just need the very edge here. We don't need all of this. Trim about half of it. We're all set to go here. I'm going to come in and marry these two up. I'm going to hold the wire right to the top of the thermistor. Remember, I put a little dab of solder on the soldering iron, and that really helped everything flow. Okay, so now I've got this finished up, and you can see we've got the terminal here, the thermistor there, and then the wire on the other side. Now the way this works is this has to be, when this is installed, it has to be tied to ground, and then on the other end of this wire would be tied to another resistor, which would be tied to a positive voltage, and then right here in the middle is where our voltage division will take place, and you would tie that into the analog input on a microcontroller, and this will give you your analog in, and it's going to vary. That voltage will vary depending on the current temperature of the thermistor. I think that's it for this episode. Thanks for watching, and remember to rate, comment, and subscribe.